Molding the Winn project.
Here we go. First thing you want to do is mark your cutting line in case you're cutting the piece, and then probably get your height and start building your wall. I like to build them out of cardboard that I get for free from shipping boxes from the U.S. Post Office, because that way it's recyclable and you don't have to worry about having to use it again or how you cut it, and you can cut some nice straight boxes like that. So I like to get all my markings and I line it up around the piece and get all the folds. You don't have to do it all in one bend like this. You can also just cut corners, cut the sides off and just cut walls. But sometimes I like to just fold it in one so there's less glue points.
This seems easier.
Definitely not necessary. No, sometimes this is harder when you're trying to go around a piece. But this way you're just using one little strip of hot glue, a lot less leak points in case things are going to leak.
I hate leak points.
Yeah, you don't want your silicone to leak out, so you want to use a hot glue, get a nice
tight seal.
Nice tight seal on it, and make sure that your silicone's not going to leak out overnight, because that could be a giant mess and a giant waste of money.
In your pot or on your table.
Right. So basically, just make your box, put it over your piece. I like to mark a top line. You can see that top line there of how high you're going to need to pour the silicone to make sure that you cover your piece. That way you're not kind of guessing, because once you cover them, you're not going to know how thick the wall is once you cover them with silicone. So you want to make sure you have that marked ahead of time so you can kind of make sure that it's thick enough at the bottom. So then again, make your seam with hot glue all the way around the box. And at this point you don't have to be sure to cover every little piece because you're going to seam up the side anyway. But this is just a good help in making sure that there's no leaks. Again, that's a really important step.
Now this is called a one-piece mold.
Yes.
Correct?
This is a one-piece box mold. The box doesn't have to be a fancy shape. You can literally use a square, you can use a cup, you can use anything you can use a cylinder, anything that fits around your piece. Or you can use this trapezoid that we've made here. But again, make sure that you seal up your edges. Any edge that you glue, double glue the outside. Just to make sure that you're not going to bust open at the middle of the night, because it's going to sit for 6 hours in a liquid form as it's curing, and you really don't want that to leak out.
And hot glue is nice and inexpensive and works really well.
Yeah. You can also use tape if you want to tape your molds, but taping it to the ground it's not going to be good. You want to make sure you get a good seal. And what we're showing you here is a quick and easy way to do mold making with household supplies. By no means is this like the only way to do it, or the proper way of any way. This is just a quick and easy, like, homemade way to do it using stuff you have around the house. So you're going to want to make sure you measure your silicone, use a scale. It doesn't have to be completely accurate, but pretty close helps. Anytime you get kicker into silicone, it's going to cure. If you don't put enough in, it just takes a lot longer, but eventually it will cure. But having a nice measurement makes sure makes it set up properly. So
that's where the digital scale comes in handy.
Yeah. And this one is off, it's digital, so it doesn't read every tiny increment, but it gets it close enough to what you need. It's a 10% mixture between this silicone and its kicker, its curing agent. So, it's a pretty easy measurement to get, and once you're close enough, it's fine. So here we are pouring in the curing agent. It's one of my favorite colors, this blue that it is. Again, it's a 10% mixture for this silicone here. So once you have this poured in, you're going to want to start stirring it. You have plenty of working time here, so no worries about speed or anything like that. Just don't do this for hours, but get a nice thorough mixture. Make sure that all of the white is touched by blue. You want to, you don't want to leave any kind of streaks in it. You want to make sure that it's a nice, even color all the way through. Scrape the bottom, scrape the walls, because you don't want to be pouring uncured silicone onto your piece.
Just like when you're making cookies, get all that butter in there.
There you go, just like cookies. So make sure it's a nice, even blue all the way through. Okay, so grab your piece to mold. What you're going to want to do is get a nice thin stream going over it. This thing is it's thick enough that it's not really going to matter too much. It's not going to break any piece of my sculpture by pouring over top, but I still like to pour in a corner, and I like it to just kind of fill its own spaces as it fills in, kind of gets rid of any air bubbles that might form. If you want to pour it from a higher distance, you can kind of help ease the air bubbles if you're not using a pressure tank at the end here. But Ideally, you're going to want to use a pressure tank, so this part really won't matter how fast you fill it in. But definitely try and keep it in one corner and let it flow around so that you're not trapping any air underneath of the piece or any air underneath the silicone itself. You want to alleviate air bubbles here as much as possible. So you can watch it as it fills up around the piece here. And this is what I was talking about earlier about how it, once you pour it over the top of your piece, you're not going to know how thick that top piece is going to end up being, which is going to end up being the bottom of your mold. So you want to make sure that you have a good thickness at the bottom of your mold, just to help the mold stay in one piece when you're working with it.
What's a good average thickness? About a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch?
A 1/4 inch is fine to go all the way around. For the bottom of the mold, I like to go just a little bit thicker, but it really depends on how much money you're trying to save on silicone. If you buy your silicone in large buckets, it's a lot cheaper per piece. So, but if you're buying it, a little bit at a time, it gets a little bit expensive, so it could be a little more expensive to make a mold. So then again, here we are, ready to put this is the liquid silicone into the pressure tank. You can also use a vacuum chamber. I prefer a pressure tank. I like the way it works with the silicone, I like the way it works taking the air bubbles out, and I don't like using a vacuum chamber because it just takes forever, and it's messy, if you ask me. So go ahead and just lock your piece in, and when you put the air in, when you let the air in, you're going to want to go slow, and you're only going to want to go to about 30 to 35 pounds of pressure, and that's plenty to get all of the air out you're going to need for a silicone mold.
Now this pressure pot was actually made out of a paint pot.
Yes.
And we can maybe cover that on another time.
So after time passes, 6 to 8 hours or so, you're going to want to let the air out of your tank and then take it out, and that should be cured. 6 to 8 hours is a good curing time for this stuff, but check your silicone and what it takes. Could be shorter, could be faster. I like to check to make sure it's done by poking it, and yep, this one's done. So let's take it out, and this is the fun part, demolding. With the cardboard wall, really you're just ripping it apart and recycling that stuff. So just toss it to the side, don't worry about it. If you make your walls out of something else, you might be able to reuse it, like if you make it out of a plastic or things like that. But over time, that stuff gets just sticky and gross, and I like to just make a new wall each time. It doesn't take that long, as you can see, to make a wall, so I like to measure it I like to make a specific mold for each piece I'm doing. A lot of times when you're demolding something, it's not going to happen like this. This just happens to Neil really powdered up this piece and got it real smooth, and it popped right out of the silicone. That is generally not going to happen with your piece. You're going to take it off the base, and your piece is going to be still inside of the silicone. Like I said, Neil just happened to slick it up, but that's how you're normally going to get your piece. What you're going to want to do then is find your edge that you drew that mark on, and you can start cutting down the edge to free up your piece.
So you're looking inside the mold now for that black line.
Right there. And you know where the little line is, so you can, hopefully you remember your piece that you just put in there. Now, obviously, since this popped right out, I'll just pop it right out again. No worries about cutting a line, because we know that the castings are going to pull right out because this pulled out so easily. So the only thing left inside, as you can see, is the guy's eyeball stuck way down at the bottom, and that's because there is a it goes more than halfway around the circle, so it closes in on itself. So all I need to do now is pop out that little section, since I can't reach my big hand inside. Although I'll try for a second here. Just pop out the eyeball from the other side, and on a normal casting you won't have to worry about this because the eye will be attached in resin. Obviously this time the eyeball was made out of a separate piece.
And we can go into cutting open molds on another episode.
Correct. But you can see, normally you could cut that open, and you can even cut it open afterwards if you'd like.
And there's your finished mold. Ready to go and cast.
Ready to pour castings.